Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on Distilled Wisdom. Our guest is Eric Snider today. Eric owns Unity Property and Pest. Unity Property and Pest offers property inspection and pest control services throughout Northeast Ohio. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thanks so much for having me, Adam.
No worries. So, Eric, tell me a little bit about your company. Tell me about Unity.
So we're a property inspection and pest control company here in the Northeast Ohio, specializing in real estate inspections, people buying and selling properties that want us to come in, and give it a full overhaul before they purchase a property. Specialize in radon testing, sewer scopes, and all pest control services.
That's fantastic. Have you been in pest control long?
I've been in the pest control industry. That's actually how I started. I've been in it about 10 years now. I started with a company out of the Cleveland area, bigger privately owned company. And I actually fell into that by chance, really. So I used to work at the hospital, Akron City Hospital, worked there for a couple of years, and they switched all of our departments over to part-time. So that being, I needed a job. I couldn't survive on part-time work, so I was just looking for just anything, really. My brother-in-law at the time was working with a major company out of the Cleveland area, and he's the one who got me into the pest control industry to begin with. So at first, it was something that I just wanted to do briefly, or just needed something to be able to just pay my bills. But jumping on and starting to learn that trade, I really fell in love with it. Fell in love with some of the veterans that were really just teaching me all the ins and outs about the pest control industry and how to be successful at it. And that's really, that's what ended up happening as far as like me being able to stick through it and learn the trade, which is how I ended up into the home inspection industry, because so all the local, home inspectors in the area, real estate agents, when you're buying properties, a lot of them require, especially VA, they require termite inspections, VA, WDI, wood destroying insect inspections. So our company was hired out quite a bit to do some of these for local home inspectors and realtors. And I was the one that was on the termite crew. I was going out and doing a lot of these inspections for them. So I was able to meet a lot of the home inspectors in my area. And as a result, I really became good friends with one of them. And I seen everything, and I seen how he would go about his process about being a home inspector. It was something that really intrigued me and interested me.
So is this something that led into, Unity and Unity Property and Pest? This is kind of like the inspiration behind it, as you
Sure.
saw how they work together? Or?
Well, it's just a benefit. So, becoming a home inspector, after I was able to meet this gentleman, I took a leap of faith. And it was just something I was intrigued by and interested in. So when I jumped out and I became a home inspector, he sent me to school, worked under him, and he shared with me everything, all of his knowledge about the industry and what it takes to really become a great home inspector. Now, as a result of that, I realized the benefits of the two. So I worked under him for about 4.5 years as a home inspector, and we started Well, I'll back up just briefly and say how those two really go hand in hand with one another. But, as a result, I see how the two really go hand in hand. I see how by being a home inspector, it makes me a better PCO, pest control professional, and by being a pest control and an exterminator, how that really goes hand in hand with being a better home inspector. The two just really supplement one another.
That makes a lot of sense. I could see that, especially, I know you personally. So for the viewers / listeners out there, Eric's a very good friend of mine. We've been friends for years. So a lot of the questions I'm asking, I actually know the answers to, because, we've been kind of hand in hand throughout your business journey. But I could see that because you focus on realtors a lot, and you offer a lot to realtors, and using that to network through with the property inspection, gaining pest control, contracts. That's pretty ingenious, honestly. Can you tell me a little bit more about the company? Because I think it's important for the listeners to understand that that relationship you had with your former employer. I know it ended on kind of a rocky road, and but I think it's important because we're trying to educate, entrepreneurs and people going into business, and you have one of those, oh shit moments, right, where your world got kind of turned upside down when you partnered with your former employer and decided to branch out on your own. And I think it's a lesson worth telling. So.
Sure. So my former employer, he was one of my closest friends. He was my mentor. Like I said, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be where I'm at today had I not been under his leadership. Just everything that he taught me about the home inspection industry. We had started a pest control company together, him and I. But the problem I started noticing, but while we were trying to do this, was that we were partners on one thing and I was still an employee on the other. So there was still I still had to pay my bills and I still had to help him with his company while we were trying to find time to build this together, and it just wasn't working. And I had really kind of hit a ceiling on, just where I was able to grow with his company. So there was no hard feelings.
Even as an owner?
Well, I mean, because we were only partners on the one, so if we would have jumped off on the other, it would have been, he still had another business to run. He still had his business, his livelihood, and he still had his family he had to take care of. So no matter what, it would have unfortunately been a little bit more one-sided. Gotcha. So I realized this, and it was just one of these things to where it's okay, the next logical step would be me going out on my own. So I allowed him to keep the company that we had started together because a lot of them were on his resources. And, I gave him extended notice. I, agreed to stay on if he decided to hire a replacement for me. I was going to stay on, help train, whatever the case may be, because I cared about him. I didn't want anything. I didn't want any bad blood there or anything like that. There was just the next step I needed to take in my journey. When I did that, I guess it was probably within the first week after that, I was served with paperwork for a lawsuit. And this was kind of a scary time for me, only because I had developed a very small nest egg at the time for me to be able to pay my bills for the first few months while I'm trying to jump out into this unknown area that I had never experienced before. And in doing so, I was served with those paperwork with the lawsuit, and we ended up.
What was he actually suing you for? I mean, what were the conditions? What was the claim? What was the actual legal claim?
Well, there was a bunch. There's always that legal verbiage in it to where there was several things, but basically I had an unfair advantage of the inner workings of his company in a similar workplace.
So essentially a non-compete.
Yeah. So it wasn't that with home inspections with the pest control, even though I was giving him the company, which was understandable. But, so for the first 12 months, I wasn't able to do pest work. I wasn't able to do any kind of pest control, market for it, anything. And obviously.
For an entire year?
For an entire year. And then to make matters worse, a couple weeks after that, COVID happened. The state got shut down.
So he won the judgment.
I settled it. I only settled it just because in my where I was at, I could not financially fight it because I was walking out under this with just a couple pennies to rub together because I was taking a big leap of faith. I had no money to try to fight this. I kind of had to bow out and accept those terms and accept those conditions.
Okay, so you accept 1 year without half your business, and then you get nailed with COVID. Mm-hmm. This is a pretty rough start.
It was a rough one. I was kind of down and out, before I even had a chance to get up and running. So what ended up happening, I was like, oh, I got a mortgage, I got a family here, I got bills to pay. So I was in a pickle. So I ended up, I found a job working night shift out at Owens Corning in Medina, Ohio. They make fiberglass asphalt shingles.
You took regular employment while you were starting your business. Mm-hmm. This is the reason I'm stressing this is
sure.
There's people that are thinking about going into business for themselves, and when you're starting something from the ground up, right? Mm-hmm. It's not going to cover your bills right away, right? You have to reinvest in it, and so That's fantastic, by the way. Kudos to you.
Yeah. So going and working at Owens Corning, OC, I was making fiberglass asphalt shingles. Okay, 12-hour shifts, working night shifts. It was usually, it was like 6 to 6. And then I would get off work at 6 a.m. and I would do home inspections during the day and sleep in the afternoons before I'd have to get up and go to work in the afternoons, or vice versa. I'd push in 3 hours of sleep, get up, and I was slowly building my business that way while still not being able to do pest control for a year. So people are like, are you doing it? Not yet. So even on the back of my business cards, the first year I said, pest control coming 2021, and
That had to be so frustrating.
it was aggravating. Part of me was angry, but at the end of the day, like, I knew what I was capable of. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what my dream, what I wanted it to look like. I knew what I was chasing, what I was running after. But then, I had to realize that I was also stuck on a certain side of fear. So my goal when I first started that job was 3 months. I was just 3 months, I was going to stack up a little bit of money, have enough to pay my bills, and just make that leap. Well, I ended up being there a year. I ended up being there my whole first year, and that was a rough year.
It sounds like you weren't sleeping.
Yeah, it was a rough year, and it was a rough year for the people in my life at the time too. Family, friends, people close to me and stuff. I probably wasn't the easiest guy to be around that first year because all I did was work and barely slept.
So let's hone in on that a little bit. Let's talk about some of the sacrifices early on in business. I think this is overlooked, right? Everything's sensationalized today. When you hear the gurus and they tell you about, just get an LLC, start a business, it's no big deal, and it's super easy. They don't talk about the emotional toll. They don't talk about the toll on the family, the friends, the girlfriend, the wife, whatever, right? Through that period, how did you maintain your personal relationships, right? Like, how do you give the attention when you're sleeping 3 hours and working the rest, right?
Yeah, I guess I was lucky for the people I did have in my life because they stuck it out. Because personal relationships, the relationship I had, family, they were all strained. People were always on edge, because I was never present. I was never available because I was always either sleeping for the very limited few hours that I could, and then I was working. I mean, at Owens Corning when I was out there, I mean, it was 48 hours. I couldn't just be like, well, I'm only going to do this part time. They're like, no, it's 48 hours. So I'm like, I was putting 48 hours in there, and then I was surely doing that with my business because I wanted it to grow and I didn't want to have to be there any longer than I had to. But I got stuck on that fear because I got stuck with that weekly paycheck. I got stuck with that constant knowing that it was going to come. And with the business going on your own, you know what I mean? It's a lot of it is just chance. A lot of it's just going out there and just taking that leap of faith and grinding until you get it. So you don't have that weekly, you don't have that guaranteed paycheck coming in on Friday. So I can see why that can, stunt some people from making that leap because it is scary, especially when you got bills and everything else like that. But
do you think anybody should go into business, or do you think it takes a certain person, a certain personality, or do you think anybody's capable of doing business? It's mixed out there. You got some people that, they're of the thought process that anybody can go out there and start a business. And then you have others that, no, not everybody can. Because, and I'm one of the latter, by the way.
Sure.
I don't think everybody can. I don't think it is for everybody. The society needs employees. We need people that are going to, more or less, they don't want to sacrifice, right? They want to work and get a check and support themselves.
Sure.
Do you agree, or do you feel
sure.
that's different, or that anybody can do this? And the nonsense you hear where everybody can open a business, right?
I don't necessarily think. I guess everybody possibly could if they were willing to sacrifice and make those sacrifices and put in that time and have that fire burning in their belly and everything that it really takes to go through some of them dark times. Some of them, especially at the very beginning, I mean, that was scary. I'm like, as soon as I went out on my own, I'm like, well, this is already stopping. Like mentally at first, I mean, there was a few days where I'm like, well, I'm already underwater here. But I know there's a lot of people that feel safe with just doing a 9 to 5 or something like that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either. You know, some people, it's just what they want to do and they're comfortable with that. And, you know, I tip my hat to them for it. You know, it's just not something that I ever wanted to do. I know I wanted more. And that's just kind of how my personality is. It's how I've always been driven.
Well, where did that come from? Why do you want more? You know, what separates people, right? Yeah, some people are content, some people aren't. What drove you to actually go through all this pain, right?
You know, I mean, if I really think about it, it's just something that I wanted to be able to provide a great life for my family, possibly even leave something for them, you know, just have a legacy for them. But I also always wanted to work for myself. I didn't want to have to punch a clock. I didn't want to have to somebody tell me to be there by 9 a.m. and have to be there by 9 a.m. and have to stay there to a certain time. I like to have, well, I gave up a 9 to 5 for a lot more than that. I work a lot more than that, you know, but at the same point, like it's something that I get to build. It's something that I'm creating, that I've taken from nothing and turned into something, you know, with the help of a lot of people. You know, that's not something I was ever able to do by myself. If it would have been left to just me, you know, but the resources, the people in my life, the people I've surrounded myself with, I mean, none of this would be possible without them.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. How's your circle? You know, they talk about this all the time on social media and all the gurus and shit. Do you have that strong circle of support around you? So I don't know if you want to discuss this, but you know, you're in recovery, right? So people don't always realize, by the way, this is for the audience out there. Everybody has struggles. Everybody goes through shit, right? Everybody's got that dark story where, you know, my mommy didn't love me or whatever it is. So everybody's dealing and contending with those things. But I believe, and quote, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you found support through AA, right? And has that been valuable in business? Has that carried over in any way?
Oh, yeah. Well, so, I mean, 12-step recovery saved my life. And that happened long before I went out on my own with business. I wouldn't have been here today or been able to do everything that I'm capable of doing today without recovery. I mean, for me, you know, I'm a recovered alcoholic addict. My life was a mess, you know, for a very long time, you know.
Been there, brother.
You know, I just celebrated 7 years sober back in January. And
Congratulations.
yeah, I appreciate it. And that led me into all kinds of things. That led me to meet with people and to a relationship with God, you know, which is a huge aspect of my life and my circle today. You know, I mean, it always really starts with that. And everybody has some form of faith, whatever it might be, you know, or some opinion on what that is for them. But for me, it was God, you know, and without that, I wasn't able and capable of doing all the other things. I wouldn't be here today without my relationship with him and everything that has happened since I put down the drink.
So outside of your support group with, you know, with AA, what about in business? You know, do you have people that have inspired you, people that have supported you along the way?
Oh, yeah.
And how did you locate those people, right? I think that's really important to the listener. How do you get in touch with these people? How do you find them? And, you know, how do you find somebody to mentor you through the initial stages? Because until you're actually established, right, it's hard to get an audience with these people.
Sure. So, I mean, at the very beginning, it was people that were in different businesses than me. So people like, I mean, just you know, and what I mean by that is like, I was able to watch you and everything that you started. I remember when you started this and just seeing your drive and seeing everything that you were, I mean, I was watching all along. I mean, I always watch people, you know. So it started with like people like you and, you know, people in my local area reaching. I just had this knack to where I would just call and reach and ask questions. There was other home inspectors in my area where I'd call and I'd ask questions. I'd see successful home inspectors in my area. It's like, hey, can I ask you some questions? Like, I'm not trying to infringe on your business or anything like that.
And they would actually entertain you, though. I mean, I did. For some weird reason, you and I just kind of clicked when I met you.
Sure.
But I've done that in the past too. Like my earlier years, it was difficult, right? It's kind of like, fuck you, who are you, right? And I got a lot of that. So maybe I'm not as persistent as you are or something, but, it sounds like you got good results with just reaching out, but they actually took your call, took your time. And I'm talking about real established people, right?
Not all of them did. A lot of them did, but I'm not afraid to ask questions either. So I've had people say, yeah, I'm not interested, and that's fine. You know what I mean? I still try. But there was a couple local home inspectors. A buddy of mine, Steve, he's out of the Copley area. He's an established home inspector in our area. I can remember at the very beginning, I was constantly calling him, asking him questions, his thoughts, his opinions, his experience with certain things, what worked and what didn't. And then I know, with Facebook and social media, I started getting plugged in with some of these pest groups, that are involved with other pest groups around the country. And I just started getting involved and started trying to get active with some of these groups, going to some of these conferences and meeting people and trying to network that way. And now my circle's all over the country. I got a great guy down in the Miami, Florida area, Frank. He's great. He's constantly available to ask questions. I got my coach now, Alan, who I love. I do a Thursday class with him every week. It's a master's pest class. Me and some of my technicians are involved with every Thursday that we're doing. And Alan, I also do some coaching with him every 2 weeks now. We're starting to meet on a bi-weekly basis because they are where I want to go. They've been where I'm trying to get to. Maria, I love her to death, and Tony Sorrentino with Pest Pros out of Michigan, wonderful company. They've done some retreats to where they've invited me in the Northeast Ohio area.
Have you gone?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I'm leaving again Wednesday. I'm driving out to Michigan to stay over there in Kalamazoo with them, and we're doing a pest management course out there as well. But it's those kind of people to where they had no hesitation. I would call them, I'd ask them, I can't tell you how many times I've asked them questions, pros, cons, this is what I'm encountering, this is what I fumbled, this is where I dropped the ball, and like, what's your experience, what's your experience, what's your experience, because these are the people I'm trying to lean into, and I wouldn't be here today without these people and their guidance.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. Trying to do it alone, right, is damn near impossible. You need that support group around you, and that's really, really important that you gain the right connections and you're listening to the right voices, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had this too, where you have outside individuals that aren't in business and they have more or less the employee mindset. Those people their heart's in the right place a lot of times.
Sure.
But they drag you down, and so this is crucial to identify the circle that you that'll truly support you going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's honestly one of the biggest takeaways. Anybody listening to this, that's probably the number one takeaway of this show today. Is having the right not necessarily connections, but the right people to support you through the journey that can actually answer your questions. If you're listening to your mom and your dad, but your mom and your dad have been employees the whole time, it's terrible advice. You don't want to listen to them. You want somebody that's actually accomplished what you're in business doing.
Well, I want somebody that's been where I'm trying to get to. Those are the people that I want to lean into and listen to. I mean, like my mother, I love her to death. She's wonderful. But she, she plays it safe in a lot of ways because she just wants to make sure I'm always safe and I'm protected and nothing bad happens to me and everything. But with ideas with the business and growing and stuff like that, she's usually not my first go-to just because I need to be leaning towards somebody that has been where I'm trying to get to.
Your parent will give you great love advice, but when it comes to business, unless they're in business, you don't want to necessarily take their advice, on that aspect. It's completely understandable. So I think we are actually reaching our commercial break. And by the way, this podcast is sponsored by Refresh Franchising, my company. So we're going to take a quick break here and we'll be right back.
Every day you wake up thirsty for more. But instead, you get up and go to your job. You break your back building and managing someone else's business with nothing but a paycheck to show for it. You only get one life, and it feels like it's passing you by.
Hey, why haven't you started your own business yet?
If you want to build something of your own, if you want a business instead of a job, take charge of your life and click the link to learn more and start your journey today.
I dare you!
Well, welcome back. So while we were on break and you were listening to whatever my wonderful commercial is that I put together, we decided to hop into some interesting topics. And I think one of the most important ones is going to be what position you hire for first when you're ready to hire. So Eric, who did you hire? What was the one that made the difference when you were growing your business? In the early stages, what took the most pressure off you?
Well, my admin, my office administrator. I hired a lady, local here, Shanley. She's been wonderful. She came on with me in October and has really been a godsend. You know, obviously there's always the beginning things, the quirks and the kinks and everything that we're starting to work out, but she's really, starting to get dialed in and comfortable in her position. But that was not my first hire, and it should have been. My first hire, I ended up...
Here at Refresh Franchising, we actually require that our franchisees start with an admin. I agree with you. It is one of the most important roles in a business by far. Mm-hmm. The owner just doesn't have time. Sorry to cut you off here.
Oh, no, absolutely. You're spot on with that, because it was getting to the point. So I was rolling by myself at first. Last year, I hired a guy on. He was my first guy I hired on, and it helped me with the workload, but it didn't change my job duties because I was still in the field full time. I was still answering calls. I'm still doing scheduling. And then with my job, some of the places I go into, crawl spaces, attics, some of the...
So you're doing invoicing while you're covered in dirt and cobwebs?
Well, I've scheduled plenty of job from a crawl space. I've had people, call in, and I'm like, hold on, let me check my schedule. I'm in pitch black, laying on my belly, scheduling jobs in the crawl space. Things I'm like, nah, we gotta hire somebody on for this. So that was obviously the next one that I ended up going with because it just was something I should have done from the very beginning. Some of my other my buddies that are starting out on their own, that's been their first hire, so they did make the first move, which was the smart move, just because it just is too much.
It's not even an overly high payroll expense either. They're crucial to the business, but at the same time, it's not like it's not a huge skill set. So the payroll is not astronomical, right? And the time it frees up, it's just you're able to produce instantly.
Yeah,
instantly. The second you hire them, you're able to double your revenue in your business.
So, and that was the part. So there's always parts of me that get stuck on the side of fear, because it's an expense. It's another expense. And then more than that, though, somebody's livelihood, their family, and everything is reliant on it. So it's scary. And at the time when you first make that move, at least for me, this is just my personal experience, it's like a, pain in the gut. You're like, oh, God.
Well, how do you deal with that, right? I mean, I know how I deal with it. I drink a bottle of bourbon and I get stressed out. But no, seriously, when you're adding on payroll and you're adding expenses to your business, what do you look at when you're doing that?
Well, so I look at my sheets, I look at all my numbers, but still, it's just like, that fear, like, is business going to be here next week? It's just one of those things it's just a little bit of fear, but it's talking to the right people, talking to the people that are in my corner, my people in my circle, running ideas by them, running pros and cons and everything like that. But like you said, the moment I was able to hire her on, she was able to take so much from me that was able to free me up to actually do what I'm really good at. And that's getting out there, networking with people, meeting clients, doing sales, things that I should have been doing that I was not able to do because I was doing all those other things on my schedule as well as being in the field full time. It was too much.
How did your business change when that happened? Right, like what was the impact the second you bring in that admin? Uh, what did revenues do? What was your actual growth from that?
So the first, obviously at the very beginning, there's that learning curve. There's training her on my systems and everything. Training her on a job. She was doing ride-alongs with me. She was doing ride-alongs with some of my guys. And from there, but the moment she was able to get it and get a hold of it and able to start taking all the phone calls, and we went through, I can't tell you how many times we did, just going through trainings until she felt comfortable, because I didn't want to just be like, all right, to the wolves, best of luck to you.
If you asked my first admin that question, she would say she got zero training, and she doesn't understand that her training was under fire, but it was done on purpose.
Yeah. And there's still parts, where Shanley will just, my phone rings, because Shanley's, got a question or anything else like that. But she knows that she can call me and we can walk through those things, But it has been instrumental in just my time to develop and work on what I actually need to work on in the business, which is actually working with our customers, working with our clients, providing better services, doing other trainings, adding in other jobs, things that I was not able to do before because I just didn't have the time. We did not have the time. So it's been just instrumental. And then that with just revenue coming in and being able just to provide top tier service for our clients now, because we are free to be able to do it, has been.
Completely get it.
Yeah.
Let's switch things over a little bit. Let's talk about marketing for a second. So you have a unique marketing, strategy. Today, everybody thinks social media, right? That's important. Don't get me wrong. But let's talk about your network marketing, right? Your pursuit with real estate agents and, with larger clients. I know you just landed a pretty good contract with Papa John's? Tell me how you go about landing these types of contracts.
Getting out and getting FaceTime with these people. Seeing what services they're being provided. Are they happy with their services? How we can try to, remain affordable, but also just give them that top tier service that they might not be getting right now. But that just comes with experience and just meeting these people. I believe in my product. I believe in our service well enough because I've worked for other companies. I've learned what not to do. I've done a lot in the years. That's just what we were trained to do in a lot of companies, what not to do moving forward if you want to be a successful.
Do you know what the number one way to prevent the what not to do section is?
I don't. What do you mean?
Buy a franchise.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
It kind of solves it. Sorry, I'm a little biased here because, I'm a franchisor. But
sure.
The reality is if you buy a franchise, you prevent flushing so much money down the drain. If I didn't have I have a different ambition level than the average business person. They want to establish a business, build a business, and have something, of value, right? I want to build something that is fucking global, right? So I have to own the brand. But if I didn't have to own the brand, I would franchise all the way, in a heartbeat. And shit, I might buy other people's franchises later. I'm not kidding. I mean, buy a McDonald's. You want to retire early? You want to retire quick? Buy a fucking franchise. Buy a McDonald's. Buy a Wendy's. Set it up. You're going to make a killing, and you're not going to even have to run it, and everything's just problem solved for you.
Sure.
Have you thought about that with your business? Like, I know you're way too far down this rabbit hole, right?
Yeah. Gone too far to turn back.
But if you had to do it over, would you consider that?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, something that already has like a proven system and already has all the kinks worked out. I mean, I started in a Chevy Malibu with a pest sprayer in my back seat, man. So, I mean, yeah, I had to work through all the kinks and had to learn the hard way in a lot of ways, what doesn't work, what does work. I've wasted a lot of money in other areas that I should, would have been obviously better suited in other areas.
I'd say I'd flushed millions, literally millions, just learning different things. Right?
Sure.
You plan on scaling out on a corporate model?
I mean, obviously we're a long way away from that, but I would like to grow. I mean, that's the That's the goal here. That's what we're working towards. Working with a lot of people.
I'm sorry. I don't think you're that far away from it, but
Well, sure. I mean, I guess that's hard to, I guess I just want to see what the future holds here, at least in the next year. I really am excited about 2023 on the direction we're going right now, to the scale that we're actually growing right this second. Here we are, a couple weeks out from spring, man. We were able to skate right through this winter. I'm super excited about my team. I'm super excited about some of the goals that we have listed for 2023. And I'm excited to see what this year holds for us. But as far as being able to grow, as far as if I'm going to go corporate or franchising, I'm not exactly sure yet. Franchising would be a wonderful model. Corporate would also be a good one. But franchising, it just it's going to be something that you and I are probably going to be talking to a lot more in the future.
for sure. I'd like to give you an opportunity to speak to any of the listeners out there that are contemplating going into business for themselves, and they're, maybe on the fence about pulling the trigger. What advice would you give them about going into business?
If somebody's sitting on the fence with it, I would say do it. I got a buddy that I always make the joke, just do it. Be like Nike, just do it. But with that also being said, just make sure that you're prepared. Have a, like we talked about earlier, having a proper business plan and everything, and just making sure that you are setting yourself up for success, and not just, going into something half-cocked with just this idea and just excited and running out there. Just want to make sure that you have everything that you need at the very beginning so you can try to set yourself up for success. But if you're on the fence with it, especially if you're in any kind of service industry, anything like that, and it's something that's like on your heart and everything like that, I think it's wonderful. I think you should go for it. And like I said, at the end of the day, even though I went through some trials and tribulations at the very beginning, it was the best decision I ever made.
Can you tell our listeners where they can find your business if they're located in Northeast Ohio and they're looking for your services? Share a little bit about, where they can find you and find more information about you.
Sure. You guys can always check out our website. We're located at www.unitypropertyandpest, all spelled out.com. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram. Our office number is 330-957-2178. Give us a call anytime to schedule for all your home inspection pest control needs. We'd love to help.
I'd really like to thank you for joining me tonight, Eric. You've been a good friend of mine now for a couple of years, and I've really enjoyed our conversation tonight. It's really been entertaining.
It has been fun.
To our listeners out there, thank you for joining us for our first episode. We have more interesting content like this coming, and I'm hoping to help provide some insights to people out there that are either going into business, in business, or trying to scale a business. And we have some more exciting interviews coming. I'm pulling from my network, and we have people coming in from all over the country on this show, and we're going to be hopefully doing a new episode every single month. So I look forward to seeing all of you soon, or speaking with you soon, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Blue skies